Hi, and welcome to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 222, and today's date is November 22nd, 2013, and the title of this episode is Major Event Ago, Full Steam Ahead with the Recovery Campaign. And what do we know? Yesterday I reported on what is happening and how this major event is going to unfold. We talked about the Chinese who are replacing the dollar, bypassing the dollar, using the yuan to pay for oil. We understand that the Chinese do not want to add to their reserves right now. They are using trillions of dollars that they're holding in dollars to pump into Africa to build up their infrastructure. We understand they will not be buying any more treasuries at this point, and this is a red flag to everyone that the U.S. dollar is losing the reserve currency status. And we understand this, and we understand that the central bankers, United States government, is looking for a way out of this. And there is more news coming out that just confirms to me that they are planning some type of major event that will occur very soon. Within, probably not December. I would probably look to January or February, because they understand what is happening at this point. They understand they are losing control in the Middle East. They understand that Egypt has made a deal with the Russians. They will be pulling in their ships into their port. They're buying weapons off of the Russians. They are accepting aid from the Russians. Saudi Arabia is hedging their bets. They are looking to China and to Russia to make sure that they are positioned well in just, when the U.S. dollar collapses. And we see in Libya and Lebanon completely losing control in these areas, and all of these countries are using the U.S. dollar as the reserve currency. And we understand in Libya, the U.S. is now sending in troops to train the Libyans to help fight against the militants, because what they are seeing is a threat to the U.S. dollar as the reserve currency. So all these things are taking place. And we also see that the U.S. is setting up everything militarily across the globe. They are encircling China, making sure that all the bases and they have all their military assets are in place. We see Russia, we see China. China building up their military right now, and they're going to eventually bypass the United States and become one of the strongest military fleets in the Pacific. And with Russia, they are looking to protect all these areas because they understand what is going to happen. The central bankers eventually will lose control of the U.S. dollar. The U.S. dollar will... What will happen is the faith of the U.S. dollar will be lost among the foreign nations. And when this happens, and when this starts to occur, they will start selling their treasury bonds. They will start sending back their U.S. dollars because they do not need them. And we have to remember that the Chinese have been making deals, and the Russians have been making deals with many, many different countries to trade their currency bypassing the U.S. dollar. And China has made a deal in Kenya, and it just so happens that we saw some type of terrorist attack happening at the same time when they had Kenya to become the clearinghouse of the yuan for Africa, which bypasses the U.S. dollar, and we just so happen to have a terrorist attack at the same exact time. And we see that North Korea is making a deal with Russia to have some type of rail line going from North Korea to Russia. We also saw North Korea making deals with Iran to purchase their oil not using the U.S. dollar, and we can see what is happening. And eventually these other nations will see what is happening. The Fed already announced that they will have to start upping their They will have to up their purchases of Treasury bonds. And of course, as things start to collapse, real estate will eventually collapse, and we can see that it's imploding right now. And they will have to up the amount of real estate that they're buying from the banks, because the amount of foreclosures that the banks will take on will be tremendous compared to what they have right now. And the amount of bonds that will be sold will become tremendous. I mean, it'll just be a tidal wave of Treasury bonds coming back to the U.S., and the Fed knows this, and this is why they're talking about increasing the Fed purchases. And of course, they started out with the tapering rant and their propaganda that they're going to start tapering maybe as early as December. We know they could never ever do this. They just mentioned it and the markets went down, and they know that this is impossible. So what they need to do, and this is why this report is called Full Steam Ahead with the Recovery Plan. What they need to do, again, is prove to everyone that the economy is improving. And we have seen this during the Syrian event. What was President Obama doing at this time? Well, he was making the rounds, going around telling everyone that real estate is rebounding. Real estate is getting better. The economy is getting better. Look, unemployment has gone down from 8% to 7.8% to 7.4% to 7.2% right at the height of the Syrian event. So we can see what they were trying to do, and what they do at this time during the month of July into August, when they thought this event was going to be the event that they were going to blame the collapse of the economy. They started the propaganda of tapering, and they kept pushing it and pushing it and pushing it, and it never happened. And then they finally turned around and said, oh, it was because of the government shutdown, because they didn't know how long the shutdown was going to last. They started the Fed started to blame the government, that it was them who were causing the economic problems, and we know this is completely false and not true. And eventually, if this shutdown went further, the White House, the Obama administration, would have had some type of event that would occur that would blame this on another country. But the shutdown, was rectified, the government was back on operation, and now all of a sudden the economy is recovering again, and it's all full steam ahead, and here we go. You're going to see different things occur in the economy at this point. We're going to see unemployment drop because they need to show that it's really getting better. We're going to see gold slammed down, even more so. We're going to see the market now continually to rise. It's going to go much, much higher because they need to show and make everybody think that the economy is on the verge for this incredible recovery. But we know better. We know exactly what is going on. And if you look back at the Great Depression, this is the same exact thing they did during this time. But let's get into the economic collapse news. Now, we know that the economy is not doing well across Europe, and we know in the United States it isn't. They can have all the manipulated numbers they want. We know what the real numbers are. We know what's really going on, and if you don't understand what I'm talking about, go back 2 episodes, and I explain the difference between the manipulated numbers and the real numbers, and I talk about that. But here we're seeing the Spain household income has been dropping, and it's dropped around 10%, and they are back to 2005 levels. And we see this in every country. The amount of income and the amount of debt of each person, their income is going down. We see this in the States. We see this in the UK, and personal debt is rising. And we see that products are getting more expensive because of inflation. And lately, in the U.S., they've reduced the amount of food stamps. So this is making it tougher for everybody. But in Spain, they are seeing that the amount of income is making it very difficult for the Spanish people to make it during this time period. And the statistics also reveal that 40% of the households are not able to handle unforeseen expenses. And what they're really saying is they are living paycheck to paycheck. And most Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. And we understand this, and this is happening across Europe. I mean, this is happening in Cyprus, Greece, Portugal, Italy. We're seeing this all over the place because what is happening is the economies are being devastated with huge amount of debt, and the unemployment is in the double digits, and we know this cannot be sustained. It is physically impossible to do this. Now, Germany, the Saxo Bank, has released some analysis, and what they are saying is they are expecting a dramatic slowdown in Germany. Now, what they go on to say here is their economic physics model sees slowdown for the next 3 to 6 months, then small rebound before a dramatic slowdown in the tail end of 2014. Overall, the German GDP will be challenged. The German economy is going to go below 1% growth and come close to a recession. And I've talked about this in my previous reports, and those people who've been listening to me will understand. Those who are new, you might want to go back to a couple of reports. The collapse that we're going to see first is going to be collapse part 1, if you like to call that, or the pre-collapse, because this will allow here, especially in the States, because the Fed has already talked about this, when this false flag event occurs, they're going to blame it, of course, on another country. And we understand that Treasury bonds, U.S. dollars, are going to come back to the country. And we understand that the economy, the number of jobs are there are going to be many people going to be unemployed, and the amount of jobs is going to increase, just like we saw in 2008. And when this happens, the Fed will have to increase QE. And the government will say they are taking dramatic steps to help the economy because of what this country did to us. It could be Iran, Syria, China. It could be any of these countries. And they are going to increase QE, not by 50%. We're talking probably about 200, 250%, because the amount of devastation that is going to happen during this collapse is going to be quite large. And the amount of treasury bonds, the amount of dollars, the amount of foreclosures, the amount of money that banks are going to need is going to be quite a bit. It's going to be a lot. So they're going to have to really pump up the money creation at this time. During this time, they're going to try to pump up the market again. How high will they make it? It's not going to go that high because the amount of job losses, and because right now we understand a lot of people are out of work, a lot of people are underemployed. We already went through the first round in 2008, and Americans lost around 38% of their wealth. This time it's going to be much higher. A lot of people are going to be struggling. They will have no money. And as the Fed starts to do this, we're going to see this first part of the collapse happen. And of course, the government's going to be out there telling everyone that everything's, it's getting better, the market's going back up. But in reality, the economy is going to be a disaster. And this is when all of this war and things are going to occur because of what happened during this false flag of, and I talked about this before, cyber attack, chemical weapon attack, dirty nuke attack, and they're going to say we need to go to war at this time because this was an act of war. And all eyes off of the economy, and now it will be put onto the war effort. And this is the beginning of the complete collapse of the private Western central banks. And this is the start of World War III. And this is what is going to, in my mind, this is how this is going to play out. And what we are seeing is we're seeing the governments and all the nations across the private Western central banks, and on the other side, on the eastern side, the Russian, Chinese, they're all building up to the same exact thing. And to prove what is happening in my other reports, I've been showing that real estate has been declining and it is not getting better. We also see that, to prove this, that hedge funds in Brooklyn right now, they are the majority of people of this investment groups who are buying the real estate. They make up 70% of the sales in Brooklyn right now. Because why? No everyday American has the resources to buy these types of homes, these apartment buildings and things like that. So what we are seeing is we're seeing hedge funds, investment companies using cash to purchase all of these homes across the country. And as they're doing this, they are trying to rent these out. They are also trying to pump up the real estate market to make the values of the homes increase. And they have been doing this, and we're seeing homes increase. But what is happening now is they realize that there are no other Americans to take up the slack and to get this bubble really going. So what is happening is the mortgage applications are plunging at this time, and I've mentioned this many, many times. We see sales starting to decline because there's always a lag. The mortgage applications plunge first, and the sales decline afterwards. And again, this is what we're seeing right now. We have reports from the new home builders saying that they're getting an increase of cancellations, and their foot traffic to their homes for people who are wanting new homes is declining. We also see, and the insiders already know this, these are Wells Fargo, Citibank, Bank of America, Chase. They've been laying off thousands upon thousands of people in their mortgage departments. And there's only one reason they're doing this, because they understand real estate is not going anywhere. Real estate is imploding on itself. But again, the government, the officials are going to be out there campaigning, letting everyone know that things are getting better. Now, if things are getting so much better and we don't have to worry about it, the economy is recovering like they're saying, unemployment's going down, why is the Fed, why do they want detailed plans to counteract bank runs? Fed Tarullo was out there saying that they need policy tools to counter the risk of devastating bank runs, just in case there is some type of collapse in the banking system. Now, it's a very strange thing to want to do at this point. We also understand that they're having a drill in the end of December where they're going to simulate bank collapses. And I have this on the x22report.com site. It's on the right-hand side. It is the potential false flag events, just like I have all the other things listed there. And he goes on to say there is a need to supplement prudential bank regulation with a third set of policy options in the form of regulatory tools that can be applied on a market-wide basis in case of a devastating bank run. And they are looking to put more regulation and to prepare and capitalize the banks for what is coming. And we know exactly what is coming. We understand what they are preparing for. That's why they created the bail-in document. This is why they're having the simulation of a bank failure in December. This is why they want to put more tools into place to counter bank runs. This is why you're going to see bank holidays. We know exactly what is going to happen. They created the FDIC Bank of England document, which allows them to do bail-ins, because the Dodd-Frank Act says the government will no longer bail banks out. So instead, they're going to turn inward and take it from your accounts, just like they did in Cyprus. And they told us when that first happened, they were only going to take 8%, then it went up to 15%. And finally, everyone was stuck with 47% of their bank being stripped away, and they were left with bank stock. I don't know about you, but I do not want bank stock. I mean, the bank is collapsing. Why would I want stock in a bank that's collapsing? It makes no sense to me. And again, Cyprus right now is still under capital controls, and they're looking to relieve them come the first part of the year. And we'll actually see if this happens, because what they're saying is they need somehow, some way to guarantee everyone's bank accounts before they remove the capital controls, because they're afraid everyone's going to rush to the banks and take their money out. And let me just tell you, I'd be the first one online. Now, we can tell that things are not going well in the private Western central bankers realm. And that makes up, Europe, Australia, the United States, Canada. The Ukraine was faced with a historic choice. They were going to go with the West by signing a new trade pact with the European Union, or they were going to go east with Russia. And what they decided to do was go with Russia, because they looked at the Eurozone, they look at the private Western central bankers, and all they see is a massive amount of debt. They see the United States creating money like there's no tomorrow. They see banks are in trouble. They see unemployment reaching new highs. They see countries in a massive amount of debt. This is what they've seen. They also saw that it was going to cost them a lot more money to get into the EU. And they went on to say that to go with Russia, it would cost around $500 billion in trade, while implementing the same exact thing with the EU, it would have cost them another $104 billion. Because of this reasons and all what they've been analyzing, the Ukraine now is going with Russia. And that should tell you something. China, okay, is not taking on any more treasury bonds. They're actually trying to get rid of their U.S. dollars. I mean, they're going to Iraq and they're purchasing oil and they're using their U.S. dollars because they want to get rid of the dollar. They're taking their U.S. dollars, investing in the infrastructure of Africa because they want to get rid of their U.S. dollar. The Ukraine has decided not to go with the private Western central bankers, which make up Europe and the U.S., Canada, Australia, and these nations, because they realize the dollar has lost a huge amount of value. The Eurozone is in huge amount of trouble, and things are not going well. So this is another red flag that there are major problems heading this way. And we understand here in the States that this is becoming more and more of a police state. We've seen the laws that are passed. We see the laws that they want to pass. We understand they want to take away and disarm the American people of their weapons because they need to. They need to do this, and we understand they've been trying for many years. And if you notice, the president continually comes up with additional executive orders that support all the laws, all the bills that haven't even been passed yet. But they're expecting them to be passed because the executive order enforces the law that was passed. By themselves, they're kind of worthless. So right now, we are seeing, and I mentioned this before, that in Texas they were stopping people to collect blood, to collect saliva, and it was supposed to be voluntary, but they were kind of forcing people to do this. And what we've learned right now is that, the federal contractors have been setting up roadblocks in cities across the country with the purpose of collecting DNA samples from passing motorists. This is a multi-million-dollar federal program and has been disturbing drivers and alarming civil libertarians. And the checkpoints consist of uniformed agents blocking a public road and flagging drivers into a testing area or a parking lot. And right now, the agency confirmed that this operation is going to be launched in 30 different U.S. cities. And they are going around collecting DNA, and they're saying they're using this to see how many people are driving who are on drugs, people who are driving who have alcohol in their system, and they're also taking breathalyzer tests. But what I believe what they're trying to do is they're trying to collect as much DNA as they possibly can, because we have to remember Obamacare was setting up a complete database of everyone's DNA samples. And I think this is part of their program. I think this is what they are actually trying to do. And of course, with all these budget problems and all the things and the amount of debt, they have millions and millions of dollars to do this. And this is definitely coming, and we can see the police state starting to form. If you haven't seen it before, you are definitely starting to see it now. Now, we understand that we had many drills, and I put them on the x22report.com site as potential false flags, and we saw, the GridX drill, the cyber attack on banks, and we saw a lot of DHS drills. And what we are seeing now, and we understand that there is, and of course, Janet Napolitano, the head of DHS, let us know before she was leaving that it wasn't if there was a cyber attack, it was when it occurred and the lights went out. Well, now President Obama created a new program. It's called Critical Infrastructure Security and Resilience Month. And this goes on to say that the U.S. Department of Homeland Security recommends actions that all Americans take to assist in protecting our infrastructure from a disaster and other hazards. President Obama's proclamation addresses the need to protect these essential services from a variety of hazards, including natural disasters, terrorism, and cyber attacks. The U.S. Department of Homeland Security website calls for federal, state, local, tribal, territorial, and private sector partners, as well as individual citizens, to actively participate, ensuring the continuation of a secure and resilient infrastructure. Well, this goes a little bit further. They want each one of you to continually to tell family, customers, employees about the impending disaster of some type of infrastructure failure. They also want you to report suspicious activity to local law enforcement, especially stressed by DHS in their "If you see something, say something" campaign. And they are wanting everyone to do this, and they want everyone to go to the website and tell as many people as you can about the threat against the infrastructure, the threat against the power grid, the threat against the gas pipelines, and this just seems like this is a complete and utter setup for this false flag event. They want everyone to realize that terrorists are going to hit the infrastructure. Now, they want every single person out there to tell other people. And this actually goes on to say that they recommend as a first step that individuals read the presidential proclamation. They ask that you share with others, family, customers, employees, what efforts you are making to support infrastructure security and resiliency. This sharing may occur in person or via electronic means, including email, newsletters, or your own website and social media. If you have the opportunity to speak in front of a large audience, don't forget to mention it. This raises a huge amount of red flags that, just like Janet Napolitano told us, something is going to happen. I've been saying this since I started my reports. The lights are definitely going to go out. It will go dark. And this is why they had this on the National Geographic Channel, the American Blackout, because they're trying to get everyone out there to understand that this is going to happen from a foreign nation. They want you to understand when this happens, and they want it to sit back in your subconscious so you remember they told you about this, and they're trying to get you to spread the word to all of your friends. Now, we understand that China is building up their military and their military force, and they've just released their first stealth combat drone. And this is another step in the country's military achievements. I mean, they're increasing their fleet, their submarines, their jet fighters, their aircraft carriers. There was also, the military of America was very concerned of the buildup, and here we are already that China now has combat-ready stealth drones on the move right now, and we see what is happening. Now, France is going to be sending more troops to Central Africa. Now, why are they doing this? Well, Central Africa is rich in natural resources. They have a lot of gold. Yeah, they have a lot of gold mines. And they have oil. They have lithium. They have copper. They have a lot of natural resources. And they're trying to get down there, and they're trying to capture all the natural resources. And we have to understand that the central bankers, globalist elite, whatever you want to call them, I know everyone has a different name for them, they are trying to maneuver their way into capturing all the natural resources they can before the world war goes green. And right now, Russia is up in the Arctic. Now, what would they be doing up there? Well, there is a $63 billion Arctic development program that Russia is heading up because they realize that there is a vast natural of reserves, including approximately about 20% of oil reserves worldwide and around 30% of the planet's natural gas, where? Up in the Arctic. And guess what? Guess who else is heading there? The United States wants to be involved in the Arctic waters, so they are also going after the natural resources there. And everyone is making a play right now to capture as many natural resources as they possibly can before this great war gets started. Now, in my other reports, I've kept continually mentioned, and I will continually to mention, that there will be some type of main event, and this is a go. They are ready to do this, and we understand that, Saudi Arabia, Israel is on one side, the United States is on the other side, no good cop, bad cop. And right now, Israel is out there saying we are not bluffing. Israel is ready to strike Iran alone, and the plan is set. The Air Force has been trained. Everything is in place. Should Prime Minister Netanyahu order a full-scale attack on Iran's nuclear facilities, the Israeli Defense Forces are ready to go into battle. And what we understand is that the United States has a treaty with Israel. If Israel is in battle with Iran, the United States, according to the treaty, will come to the assistance of Israel. So it doesn't matter how this plays out, there will be something happening. For the American people to go and push and beg for war, yes, there will be a false flag event happening here in the United States. And I discussed this in my other reports. But let me continue with this. Technically, Israel will be ready to strike Iran if and when the decision will be taken. No one is eager for war with Iran at this time. If war with Iran comes, American planes will be used. The question is, will it be American pilots or Israeli pilots flying those planes? It would be a dirty one, a long one, and no one wants to be in. We want to postpone as long as possible. If you ask me for my assessment, that's what I have done for 25 years, doing assessments. I believe it is almost impossible to stop Iran without military force, and this is coming from Ahmed Dror, who is a spokesman for Israel. An Israeli strike on Iranian nuclear installations would halt Iran's ability to produce nuclear weapons for a long time. And what he's saying is they are ready to go. They are ready to push this forward. They are ready to move to the next step. And I don't really think it matters at this time if there is peace with Iran or if there isn't peace with Iran, because we understand that Reid was out there already saying that in December, when Congress comes back from recess from Thanksgiving, they will be looking at adding new restrictions, new sanctions to Iran. And the president was already out there telling everyone that if you add more sanctions, he will only have one option, and that's a military option. If the Senate, the Congress, does not increase the sanctions and they don't go ahead with it, and there is a peace resolution drawn up, we can see that Israel might go ahead and strike Iran, which will then lead to the next step. And we can see this playing out in 3 different ways, and I mentioned this in my other report. And I'm not going to go over it again. If you like to hear it, you can go back. I think it was Report 220 that I discussed this, or maybe it was 219, and you can hear it again there. But one way or another, there will be no peace. We will see some type of an event because the American people have to be brought into this. They've already seen what happens when the American people are not. They do not want more. They don't care. Congress doesn't care. And this is why they're going to move this forward. Now, we understand here in America, they are continually taking away our rights. I mentioned CISPA before, that it is pending moving through the House. Right now, Senator Rockefeller is out there, and they're preparing the NDAA 2014 now, because they have to pass it by the end of the year, to take away our rights, because that's what the NDAA does. If you are suspected to be a terrorist, you can be thrown in prison. It doesn't matter. And when they say terrorist, it's domestic or foreign. They don't have to have proof. You don't get a lawyer. You're thrown into jail, and you can be in there for a year. And this is what the NDAA is. And what he is doing is he's doing a backdoor approach. He's attaching a Cybersecurity Act to the NDAA 2014. So he is using a backdoor approach to try to get the Cybersecurity Act passed. And this will take away the internet freedoms the way you know them today. Things will start changing dramatically. And what they are eventually going to do is all rights, according to the government, which is completely null and void. If you look at the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, it doesn't matter how many laws they impose. If we obey them, yes, they win. They take away our rights. If we oppose them, they do not. But this is what they are trying to do. They are trying to get all this legislation through any way they can because they understand what is about to happen, and that is the collapse. Now, North Korea is being put into the same class as China as a world-class cyber attacker, and we understand why they're doing this. They are doing this to build this up, just like they did with China, just like they're doing with Iran, just like they're doing with Syria, just like they're doing with Russia. They are building these countries up and trying to demonize them and using the propaganda so when war breaks out, all Americans are on board going after these countries. And it makes it much easier for them to blame it on any one of these countries because they've already said China is a master of cyber attacking. They already told us North Korea now is a world-class cyber attacker from in the likes of in league with China. They've already told us about the Syrian electronic army, that they've been advancing and becoming more technological, and their cyber attack abilities have increased. We also understand that Al-Qasim has been doing the same exact thing, and that's Iran's cyber division. And we can see exactly how they are playing this and where they are moving at this time. Now, the energy industry right now is on high alert against increasing cyber attacks. This came out to saying the U.S. government officials say such strikes are just the beginning, and the energy is by far the most attractive industry target for cyber attackers. The threat right now is huge, said Joseph McClelland, who leads a U.S. federal office created last year in an attempt to blunt attacks on energy infrastructure. The activity is already high, and it is increasing. The energy industry was the target of 53% of all cyber attacks reported to the Department of Homeland Security. And they are saying that right now that they are on high alert, they are ready, and they are expecting attacks to come because they're seeing this increase. And what does this play into? That's right, the major false flag event. They always have to hit us with the breadcrumbs first, with the propaganda, to get us all prepared and ready for what is about to happen. Now, in my other report, I mentioned that every country is going to see the people's rights taken away. Governments are going to go into lockdown secretive mode like we see in Japan. We see it here in America, and we see it in the UK. We see it throughout Europe. And Spain now is drafting new laws to curb public protests. Well, we've seen this in many countries because what is happening? Well, unemployment is getting higher. Underemployment is very high. People don't have work. People are hungry. People are not making a living. So what happens with these people? They get frustrated. They get angry. They start protesting. They start revolutions. We've seen this in Egypt. We're seeing it in Yemen. We see it in Libya. We've seen it in Portugal, Argentina. We've seen it in Italy. We've seen it in France when they tried to impose new taxes. We've seen it here in America. And we will see this escalate as time goes on. And right now, the Spanish would like to draft a law to be presented in a cabinet meeting on Friday, which would introduce heavy fines for people who participate in unauthorized protests or publish images of police or interrupt public events. If the law would come into force, people demonstrating near the country's parliament without permission could be fined up to 600,000 euros. Hey, we have the same law here in the United States that you cannot protest near government officials. You cannot protest in front of the White House. We have the same exact thing happening here. Now, to add to this event of blaming Iran or Syria, the Saudis were out there and they suspect Iran behind the mortar attack near the Saudi-Iraq border. Saudi Arabia has come under a rare attack believed to stem from Iran. The Saudi border guard said one of its facilities came under mortar fire on November 21st, and they believe that it is Iran who is handling and striking at them. And this is propaganda again because we know what is going to happen, and all of this is floating around. And I've said this in my other reports, we understand that CNN came out that Assad has a cache of hidden chemical weapons. We understand that Iran can create a dirty nuclear weapon, and if you give them a month or two, they can have a stronger type of nuclear weapon. We also have a nuclear weapon that is missing in the United States. It was transferred without paperwork. Where is that weapon? We understand that terrorists are coming in from the north. We understand that there are lone wolf factions running around America that can't be tracked, and these are Al-Qaeda, bomb makers. So we have a lost nuclear bomb, and we have bomb makers running around here in the States. We also have warnings from the Al-Qaeda leaders. We also have a warning from the Syrian, who is the new Osama bin Laden Al-Qaeda leader, and they call him the Syrian. And we see this happening all over the place. And now the White House, this brings everything all together because we saw this happen during the Syrian event where Obama was out there pushing the recovery of the economy. We already had the Fed saying that they're going to taper now. Could be happening in December, January, but it looks good. They're showing that the economy is recovering. These are the same things that happened in August, by the way. Obama was campaigning. Now they want Biden and a cabinet members of Democrats to push the economic agenda across the country. They want everyone out there, Biden and other Democrats, showing that the economy is improving. It's on the verge of a recovery. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. If the country was actually improving and on its way to a recovery, would you need to campaign to let everyone know that it is? Well, Obama had to campaign that Obamacare was the best thing since sliced bread. And is it? No, it's not. It puts penalties on people, it increased people's premiums, it increased their deductibles. The whole thing's a failure, and that's why he had to campaign. They are campaigning right now to convince every single person that we are recovering. If this is true, then this Christmas season should be amazing in retail. Stores should be opening up all over the place. Housing should be skyrocketing. People should be buying left and right because the unemployment is going down. If the unemployment is going down, all of this should be getting a lot better. It should be improving because last year our unemployment was higher. The rate was higher. We were in, 7.8%, 8%, around that. Before they, brought it down to 7.8%. But we should see now, since we're much lower in unemployment, things should be getting better. So why are all these stores saying it's going to be a horrible holiday season? Why are they closing stores? Why are the mortgage applications plunging? Why are the sales declining in real estate? Why are they laying off thousands of people in the mortgage departments? Why? We know why. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.